Hello and welcome to Buzz About, discussions with skilled professionals about how they got there and why they do it. All recorded here at 15 North Studio in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. Today's topic, real estate.
Welcome to Buzz About. I'm Megan.
I'm Bert.
And we're here today with Alec from KRG Brokerage. He's a local realtor in Phoenixville. How are you doing today, Alec?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on Buzz About.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Great, man. So how long have you been in the Phoenixville area?
So we've lived in the Phoenixville area for about 10 years or so, but the brokerage just opened up in January.
Okay, cool. And were you a broker before that, or?
Yeah, but
Cool.
my office I was with was down in Malvern. I still lived in Phoenixville, sold a lot in Phoenixville, but we wanted to get a little bit closer to home.
Oh, that's awesome. What drew you to Phoenixville?
So how I found Phoenixville was we had moved from upstate New York down to Westchester around 2013, and I was looking for a spot to buy a house, take a look, and someone had said, well, why don't you check out Phoenixville? It's a little bit like Westchester. And I was thinking to myself, what is Phoenixville? I've never even heard of it. And then we showed up, and I'm walking down Bridge Street, and I'm like, this is an even better version of Westchester.
Totally.
It's not, as collegey. There's, a little bit of a different feel and vibe, obviously a little bit smaller, a little bit more small town feel. So we immediately fell in love with it. And I think bought a house that day, literally. So.
Yeah. We were just talking with Jess from the Chamber of Commerce about that, how Phoenixville is a food and arts town. And then just out this morning, I heard someone trying to explain what Phoenixville is. And someone said Westchester, and they're like, whoa. We're not a college place.
Exactly.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's a different vibe here.
Yeah, it's definitely a different vibe. I mean, Phoenixville, it's small enough where you can kind of get to know almost everyone. You walk down the street and you see people that you recognize, but it's also big enough where we have such cool events and, businesses and so much. I just love the whole concept of the town, of it rising from the ashes. And it just seems like that's sort of what everyone embodies here.
The Phoenix.
The Phoenix, yeah.
Right, exactly. That's great. So as far as your jurisdiction goes, are you in Phoenixville, or do you sell houses in Westchester or beyond or anything like that?
Yeah. So we operate in basically the entire southeastern PA region. We do go into the city sometimes, but for the most part, we try and stick to the suburbs, just this general area. I mean, I have a big affinity for Chester County, but we go, Berks, Bucks, Montgomery, Delco, really anywhere.
And how is your approach, or KRG's approach, towards selling houses different than other people, maybe?
Yeah, right. So that's the big question right there. Setting up a real estate brokerage. So when I got into business, there's this quote that I had heard when I'm from upstate New York, right? Wegmans was formed where I was from. And so everybody knew the story of Wegmans and all the things. And there's this one quote that always stuck with me, with the person who really made Wegmans like what it is today. And he talked about the only reason for being in business is to do something that no one else is doing, and do something that's difficult for others to copy or emulate. And that's always stuck with me. So when I got into real estate, differentiating yourself as a real estate agent can be difficult, right? We're all offering somewhat similar services. We all have most of the same things at our disposal. So I set out on sort of a mission to become an expert at real estate and figure out how to eventually turn that into opening an independent and innovative brokerage. So we opened KRG in January, and we spent years working on a business model that was slightly different than what the general real estate brokerage business model is. So as a real estate broker, your business model isn't to sell houses. Your business model is to attract agents, because the way that the most normal brokerage economics work is the broker is responsible for supervising all of the agents that they have underneath them. And then as sort of the payment for that supervision, they take either a cut of the commissions, they take monthly desk fees, all of that sort of stuff. So your average real estate broker, their job is to be retaining and attracting agents. And this sort of creates a little bit of I'll use the term bloated system. If you talk to any client, they're going to say, most people say that real estate fees are too high as is, right? I mean, I don't know if either of you have ever bought or sold houses, but that's usually
Bought and
just
only one
Okay.
and only.
one and only. Yeah.
okay. So, you go to any sort of online forum and you're going to see clients and agents are going to be saying real estate fees are too high, and agents are going to be saying realtors don't get paid enough. So why is that? Where's the middle ground, right? There's a bunch of things that people don't realize. When you get your closing sheet, and the transaction's over, you only see the top of the line item that goes to the agents, but you don't see how that gets broken up on the back end. And obviously if agents are saying we're underpaid and clients are saying that agents are overpaid, something's happening in between those two things. And a big piece of that is the brokers have to take a cut of each deal. And those can range from 50%, 30% is about the national average. But there's all these other fees that can be broken into there. Team leaders, if you're on a team, can take a portion. Most agents pay for their own, they're all independent contractors. So they pay for their own MLS dues. They pay for their own realtor dues. They pay all their own stuff. They're taxed as independent contractors. So they're paying both sides of Social Security, all these other things. And we sort of set out to try and see what is it that clients are paying for that they don't need. That really is not being of service to them. And I'm going to keep going on. I know this was a short.
Yeah. Keep going, man.
A short question, but it's turning into a long one. So the first thing that we set out to differentiate was obviously, can we offer the same service, but at a lower cost? And then we sort of turned that into, well, can we offer a better service at a lower cost? And so that sort of came into our general sort of mission statement. And one of our slogans is, that we provide a superior service at a lower cost. And it took about a year. And I interviewed everyone in all different sorts of businesses to try and figure out what could we bring into the real estate world to sort of offer this to clients. So I talked to a friend of mine who owns his own immigration law firm. I talked to someone who had run a successful consulting business. I talked to someone who ran a successful recruiting business. I talked to a James Beard nominated chef just to understand the economics behind the restaurant business, to try and figure out what we could do to create a business model that allowed us to cut away a lot of the nonsense fees that people don't realize that they're paying. Mm-hmm. And we sort of settled on building our firm more similar to a project management team, right? So when you go to a traditional real estate brokerage, you talk to your agent, and that agent, reports through their broker, and they're there, but they're independent, right? So if the three of us were working in an office, if you, Bert, sold a $5 million house, great, that's awesome, but that doesn't benefit me at all, right? If you're getting inundated with clients, that's great for you, but it's not great for me. It's great for the office, but it's not great for everybody else together. Mm-hmm. And so we wanted to create a team atmosphere, because let's say you're really good at marketing, right? But being good at marketing and being good at dealing with the contracts and negotiations aren't always the same skill set. And maybe you're really good at staging and photography and making a house just look perfect, right? Yeah. Exactly. Used a little bit of what I learned about you before we set up this interview.
I could be pretty good at that.
Yeah. So agents are responsible for so many things, but the current system doesn't promote cross collaboration between people. Just because me helping you and your clients doesn't, unless you're going to agree ahead of time to compensate me, I'm not really doing myself and my clients and my bottom line any service by helping out. So we took a look at the way a project management team or a consulting firm or maybe a legal team works together. And it's a client comes in the door, and if you walk into a law firm, right, you meet with maybe the partner and you set up, you're working with that law firm, but then there's paralegals, there's associates, there's everybody working together to accomplish your goal as one cohesive unit. And you don't really see that with real estate. So we structured our firm to be more like a project management team. So my position, I'm the managing director. So every client who walks into our front door works with me directly. So whether you're a seller or a buyer, I'm working with you. I have agents who work. So I have an agent, her name's Sarah. She only helps on our listings. So she's very good at photography, very good at staging, has a really good eye for design, and that fits within her wheelhouse. So she supports us through working with our sellers and helping to make sure that our listings are presented really well. And that allows her to lean in and sort of compartmentalize and focus on something she's really good at, while also providing expert advice to everybody else, because I've met plenty of agents who are really good at that, but it can be really tough for them to get clients, because just because you're good at that doesn't mean that you're good at necessarily sitting down with people and trying to get them to join and sign on with you. So that's one of the things that we do because of that combination, we're able to sort of provide a superior service because it's everybody working together to accomplish the client's goals.
So can an agent exist without a broker?
No. Nope.
Okay. I didn't
You
know
have to, you have to have a broker. You can be a independent broker, and you can, be your own agent working as just a broker, owner, independent agent. But every agent in the state of Pennsylvania has to report through a broker.
So let's flip to the other side. You're, streamlining and getting better at being a brokerage and everybody working together. How is that helping the buyers and sellers of these homes?
Yeah. So for the sellers, one of the things, having multiple people working together obviously provides more eyes on things, gives a little bit better service in terms of like there's 3 of us working, so we can be fielding calls when we're at open houses. There's multiple of us. But it helps in the sense that like when I was an independent agent, I'd show up to our photo shoots, right? And it'd be me and the photographer. We did a photo shoot a couple weeks ago, and you had myself. We had a design consultant who's someone that's works on our team, and she has an interior design business downtown. Mm-hmm. And then also Sarah, our selling specialist. So you have all 3 of us there on your photo day. We're walking through, we're making sure that your house is presented in the best possible way. We're working together to sort of bounce ideas off of each other when it comes time to present. And we're working together to give you a full service team approach with the sellers. With the buyers, one of the things that makes it a little easier is obviously when you're working with one agent, let's say I want to see a house at 6:30 tonight, and you're showing somebody else a house at 6:30 tonight. Well, sorry, we got to change it up. We utilize a service of showing agents that we can hire as independent contractors that can come out if I can't show a house for some reason or one of our other buyer agents is tied up. But we're able to sort of provide a team-based approach. Meanwhile, the whole time, though, you're signing on to work with me, who's the broker. So like in a traditional real estate brokerage, if I'm the broker and you guys are both my agents and someone walks through the front door and they say, hey, I want to work with whoever owns the place, that doesn't help the agents. And sometimes these brokers are running around working with just their own clients, and that's not assisting the agents at all. And they're drowning in people and dealing with that, because a lot of times people want to work with whoever's name is on the front of the door. Sure. So every client still gets my help, my assistance, sort of my leadership, but we have extra hands that can help in all those regards.
I'm curious about how how do people find you? Like, can you be selective in the homes that you are going to sell to your clients? How does this whole process work? Like, how do you get listings?
Yeah. So that's finding clients that's the generating leads is the lifeblood of any real estate agent or brokerage. There's tons of ways in which people can generate leads. Obviously, the first is organic, right? You're just talking to people within, they call it your sphere of influence. So your neighbors, your friends, your colleagues, your coworkers, your wife's coworkers, whoever it is, kids, parents at your school. So that's one way. Now, those leads are generally free. The other way is to pay for leads. And so there's things like online lead generation platforms, and that's become a big shift. So back in, before the dawn of the internet, it was very different when you were trying to find leads. Now there's all these lead generation companies. So sometimes you go to these platforms to look for homes, and you click on the button that says, I want to see this house. And usually there's some sort of financial arrangement between the agents and that home searching platform whenever I tell people this, they're always shocked. So some of these platforms, and I'm not going to name any of them just for, legal reasons, but some of these platforms, the way that some of these work, so you're scrolling through and you get the notification on your phone and you click, I want to see this house. And you say, hey, contact me, an agent. How much would you guess that agent is paying that platform at the end of the transaction? Usually it's a percentage of the gross commission.
Wow, from the commission.
So from the commission. So let's say it's $1 million house. It's a $30,000 commission, 3%. Just to make numbers easy, how much do you think that agent is paying before anybody else touches it to that online lead generation platform?
It's a percentage of it.
Yeah,
I thought it was just out-of-pocket cash.
Just for the home, or is that not like a subscription, or it's per
Let's
house?
just say just for that home, just for that one home.
For $1,000.
I'm going higher, 10,000.
Oh, 10,000. So it's even still higher than that.
Oh my gosh.
So it's about 40%. And they all vary, right? Just to get the call for the introduction of that. Once that client closes, then usually that agent has signed on. Now there are different ways in which they've worked these. There's some that are subscriptions, right? And you pay $5,000 up front to be part of it, and then you pay, At one point, I had seen ones that were over $50,000 a month. That if you were in like San Francisco and places to be part of that network, that like when they click the button, you got it. And so lead generation has become a huge business for real estate, and those are costs that the consumers don't realize that they're paying for.
I was going to say that rounds back to the hidden costs of no one knowing the footwork that goes in behind those fees.
Exactly. So if I told you you're on that platform, right, and I say if you click that button, I'm going to increase the cost of your transaction by 40, 30%, whatever
This
the math
agent
works out
costs
to.
X amount. This agent costs that
Exactly.
X amount.
If you go and Google an agent, I'm going to charge you less. But if you click this button, I'm going to charge you more. Would you click the button?
I don't know. I
I
guess
don't
it
know
would
if I'm
depend on.
looking for, but if the house is there and I see the picture of the house, I would click the button right there because it's right there. I'm not going to go Google something else and try
You're
and figure it out that way.
actively
Right?
looking for that agent
get it,
elsewhere.
Yeah, and so that agent also in most platforms is not the agent who's listing the house.
Yeah.
It's just what happens is you click that, and a lot of times it'll go out to 10 different agents, and whoever picks up the phone first is the one who you get to talk to.
Oh my gosh.
And then
Pretty cutthroat.
It is, and it gets pretty crazy. And listen, there's one of my favorite things to tell people about is referral fees. So agents can do the same thing. So I can say, hey, I've got someone who wants to buy in Philly. I don't feel like driving down to Philly. I will pass this client along to you, an agent in Philly, but you're going to give me 25% when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had a mother one time call me and say, hey, I see you sell a lot in my son's neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
I will give your son or my son your contact info, and you can help him sell his house, but you got to give me 30% of the net commission for the selling side, for the listing side, when it's all said and done. And I said sure. Like that's very normal in the real estate industry. Very, very normal. It happens. The last statistic I saw was more than 50% of transactions in real estate, one side, someone is paying a referral fee to either a lead generation company or paying to another agent.
That's crazy because even like the market itself with housing is unpredictable to say the least. Like, how are you keeping up with stuff like that? Like everything that's changing, percentages are going up and down, and house prices are going up and down. Like how do you stay on top of the game? I guess.
So, keeping on top of the market itself and the inventory of the houses. Right now, it's a little bit easier than when it's more of a buyer's market because things pop up and they're usually sold in a matter of days, at least in our Phoenixville market. Yeah. So usually you just have to be on top of, checking very rigorously and making sure that you're constantly on top of what's coming up because chances are it'll be gone in the, next 1 to 3 days.
Yes.
Even sooner.
Even sooner sometimes. Right. Yep. But one of the nice things is that, you've got automated systems that, I have set up that email me if I have a client who's looking for a certain type of house, it'll do that. Houses are fun to look at. A lot of people just scroll through Zillow anyways. So that's one of the fun parts of the job. Yeah. So I would say that's not an issue. I think one of the hardest parts is keeping up with the most recent industry changes that occurred in August of 2024. So when you were talking about percentages and all that stuff, I don't know if we're getting into this yet, but there was a bunch of news articles and headlines, CNN and CNBC, probably about a year ago that were like the 6% commission is changing and, real estate fees are about to make a massive shift. So there was a lawsuit and it was a federal lawsuit, basically alleging, sort of like antitrust monopoly sort of stuff that said that the way in which the current system is established really makes it where there's not much room for competition. A bunch of the national brokerages were all named in the lawsuit, as well as the National Association of Realtors. They ended up coming to a settlement, and part of the settlement announced these rule changes and changed the way in which agency relationships work with everyone. So when you wanted to sell your house pre-August 2024, you would meet with your agent, and the agent would say, hey, my fee is, let's say, 6%. But I don't keep all of it. I'm going to give 3% to whoever brings the buyer. We're going to publicly advertise it. So when someone comes, whether it's on Zillow or the MLS or anywhere that agents are going to find your house, it's going to say we're offering 3% to whoever brings the buyer. So if I bring the buyer, great, I get 6%. If, someone from my office gets it, then we get that. But if somebody else comes in, we're going to compensate them 3%. And that was agreed to ahead of time by the seller. And they realized this system was a little bit flawed because if you guys are working together as a buyer and a buyer's agent, why should me and my seller determine what you get compensated for the job that you're doing? You and your client should decide that, right?
Sure.
So they set out and said, you can no longer publicly advertise through any of the websites that syndicate with the MLS, Zillow and Realtor.com and all those websites. You can't say if you're going to pay anything to a buyer's agent. The buyer and their agent should agree ahead of time. So now if you want to see a home, before you ever step foot in with a realtor, you have to sign a contract saying, this is our agency relationship, and this is what the cost is for that. So, 2%, 3%, for whatever you agree to with your agent. Then you go and start looking for houses. Now you'll come across a house where they're saying, hey, we've already decided we're going to give anyone who comes in with a buyer 2.5% or 3%. It's not publicly advertised. It's just discussed agent to agent. And that happens still sometimes. The more common scenario that's becoming the new emerging norm is you just, as part of your offer, you say, hey, I'm going to give you, your asking price for your house, but I also request that you pay my agent 2.5% or 3% because that's what we've already agreed to. So fundamentally, it didn't really change the numbers as much. We've only seen a slight downtick in exactly what the total commissions being paid out from each sale are. But it changed sort of where the responsibility lies, because before I could say, hey, we're seeing this house, just to let you know, I usually work at 2.5% or 3%, and they say they're not paying an agent who comes in, and now you don't really know that ahead of time. The buyer has signed on before even seeing the house to what their agent's fee is.
I'm trying to remember purchasing a home, and I do not even, the only cost I remember requesting having paid for part of closing costs. I don't even remember hearing, I didn't even think that it was a thing. I've always been curious on how do our agents get paid, and it's pre-discussed agent to agent.
That's how it used to be. Yeah.
Okay,
So when you bought your house, your agent knew ahead of time that other agent was paying them. 25 years ago, it actually used to be legally something called sub-agency, where basically everyone was technically working for the seller because the seller was paying everyone. They shifted that in Pennsylvania, where it's clearly a buyer's agent and a seller's agent, but the seller's agent was still extracting the fee from the sale price and then providing usually half of it over to the buyer's agent.
So has this changed the way that you work market price since those changes in August for your brokerage, or do you see a trend changing? Is it a popular, is being a real estate agent? I feel like going to school, a lot of people wanted to do that, but I haven't heard that a lot. So is this a trend that you've seen affect your career?
Yeah. So hitting on two different pieces. First, I'll go into how it's affecting people who want to get into the business.
Yeah.
So when you get into real estate, usually people start off very buyer heavy because the buyer used to not be signing on to pay anything. So it's very easy as a new agent to pick up a new buyer client because they knew they weren't really going to pay you most of the time.
Sure.
So as opposed to when you sit down and someone's like, hey, I'm going to sell my house and I'm going to pay $50,000 to all of the agents that are sitting down there. When you're a brand new agent, sitting down with that paperwork and trying to get someone to sign when they can hire anyone is usually more difficult. So most new agents were very buyer heavy, but now they have to sit down with their clients before showing them homes and say, you have to sign on to be responsible for this fee. Yeah. And it's definitely hurt new agents' ability to get into the business a little bit. And that's been sort of the predicting, a lot of the experts are saying that it's going to be tougher and tougher as you get into it just because of this new way of doing things. But at KRG, we're very, very specific in the way we're leveraging these changes. So the average, according to Clever Real Estate, the average PA buyer agency that someone gets paid is 2.6%. Usually, so somewhere in that 2.5% to 3% range, which is where that 6%, people hear, 6%, and that was usually split into two sides, right? 5 to 6%, 2.5 to 3%. Real estate fees have always been negotiable. That hasn't changed. But what we do is, because of our unique structure, we're able to sort of publicly market and advertise because it's not a bunch of independent agents working together. We can charge one set fee that we say, this is what we charge because every client works with me directly. So I charge all of our buyers 1.5%. Which is significantly lower, about 25 to 40% lower than the area averages, depending on where you get your statistics. And this severely helps our buyers in a super competitive seller's market. So let's say I just had this happen. We're closing in a couple of days on a house. It's the perfect house to use because the math was easy. It was listed in the 900s. We had put an offer in for $1 million and we were competing with similar offers. So we had asked the seller to pay. We said, here's your $1 million, but we want you to pay our buyer's agent 1.5% because that's what we've signed on. Me and my client had that. Whereas all the other offers came in, and I spoke with the agent about this, with very similar prices, but asking for 2.5% to 3%. So our offer was really $985,000, right? 1 million minus the 1.5%, which is 15,000. Whereas all the other offers we were competing with were asking for 2.5% and 3% for the seller to pay. So those were really like 975 and 970 offers. So our buyers are already starting off with a significant leg up when they are going into this situation and asking the seller to pay us because our fee is much lower and they don't have to come out with any additional money. If that same buyer came in with like a 990 offer, they would still net the seller more than what the competing offers were, even though the sale price was higher, just because we're asking them to pay a lower fee.
And how common is a conversation like that on a house?
As far as like
how far, like when you're getting in and saying I'm going to do a lower percentage, or the math you just did with regards to the 960, 970, yours is 985. I mean, are you always having this conversation for every house, or is this just a particular case where that happens?
No. So for every house, every time one of my buyers puts an offer in, we always highlight that our fee is much lower. So we're asking for a smaller percentage. And there's ways in which you can make an offer more attractive. And that's one of the ways in which we help our buyers make an offer more attractive without costing them anything. They don't have to, people are having to like sell their firstborn kid to get a house nowadays. And they don't have to do that. And we're giving them a leg up just because we're charging a lower fee. And it's because we've removed a lot of the back end costs that people don't realize they're paying for, made the process more efficient so we can operate it. Even with that 1.5% buyer agency, we still net more than we did when we were independent agents, just because usually we were paying out a lot of different fees and other things like that. And we made sure our business was extremely efficient and able to operate at that.
That's amazing. So let's go you personally.
Yeah.
Your journey into where you are now and kind of where you started at coming out in here. Like all this knowledge and everything you're dropping here is amazing, and it's super minute and niche. Yeah. How does somebody who gets started and wants to get to where you're at, what's your journey to get there?
Yeah. So obviously there's a lot of real estate agents in the U.S. The barrier to entry is relatively low. In Pennsylvania, you have to take a 75-hour course, which can be done completely online. So you don't even need to, go anywhere to do it. I believe now the state tests and national tests, you don't even have to leave your house. I think you can take them proctored online, so getting into real estate can be pretty easy. But finding success in real estate can be much more difficult, especially because the barrier for entry is low, competition is very high. And everyone finds their own niche. So, every single agent comes out and they say, I want to be a luxury agent. They've seen the shows on Netflix. They've seen, and they're like, I want to sell those types of houses. There's the most recent statistic I saw was in Pennsylvania, less than 0.33% of agents have ever dealt with a sale 4 million plus. So like that, like higher ultra luxury. There's a handful of agents that dominate that market. It's a very tough market to break into. So every agent, once they realize that they're probably not going to start off as a luxury agent and selling those sort of houses, they find their niche, right? And you figure out what is it that you want to be good at, and then you grow your experience with each transaction. It's a very learn as you go profession in the sense of you are an independent contractor. You're not an employee. There's not a training video that you're sitting down walking you through all these things. You're not getting promoted and learning new roles of a job. You have to sort of find mentors, teach yourself, educate yourself. And then through each one of these deals you do, you learn a lot about the way the process works.
So you are in luxury marketing, right? Or real estate,
correct?
Because your first... it blows my mind. Most with a house deal being 900, being offered $1 million. I've owned my home now for 14 years, and we were not $1 million home 14 years ago. It was very different than $1 million home these days, 14 years today. So for our area, what's the average for the Phoenixville area? And then also, how do you break in? Because we're very close to the main line. We're very close to the city. We have a very desirable downtown area now. The whole revitalization of Phoenixville. How, do we have a luxury market in Phoenixville, and how did you get into it?
Yeah. So, luxury real estate is a very tough market to break into. Phoenixville as a whole, the highest resale ever in Phoenixville of like a single residential property. I think sold about 2 years ago for 4.9. It was on the Charlestown side of Phoenixville, so like the very edge of Phoenixville. Technically Great Valley Schools, but still a Phoenixville mailing address. There's all sorts of unique homes in Phoenixville that are historic. There's a house that was for sale for a while. It was originally listed at like $9 million, and then it kept going down, and it sold a while back. It's called Vauxhall Estate, the Fatland. Yeah. Yep.
I've always been so intrigued by that home.
It's a very cool home. I know the person who owns it. And it's a very interesting home.
I see it on like abandoned homes and mansions, and people are like, no, that place isn't abandoned. Like someone owns that, but you just drive by it on Pawlings and you're like, what is that? Why is it so like it takes up so much?
It's like extravagant.
It takes up so much space, and you're so intrigued by it. You're looking at it like, can I go onto that property? You can't. It's owned.
Nope, it is owned. It is owned. I know the person who bought it, and they've been. A house like that's an interesting house to fix up. I mean, and that's the thing about luxury.
I remember scrolling. We were talking about scrolling through Zillow or whatever have you, and I was looking through the photos. Like, man, this space is incredible. You have so much potential, but yet so much like historical preservation going on in there. Yeah,
it's really cool. And the luxury market's all over the place. So I sold a house about 1.5 years ago, and this house we closed at $4 million. It was down in Malvern, and it was exactly what you would picture with a $4 million house. Like the backyard was designed by a botanical architect from Longwood Gardens. It had, like 9 different seasonalities to it. There was, the just incredible smart home tech all throughout the house with like serenity gardens that had underground speakers that, you could play music as you walk through, and the koi ponds and the golf holes and all that sort of stuff. Right. So that's one piece of the luxury market. Obviously, then sometimes you get things like Vauxhall that are incredibly unique. We have one coming up that when it gets listed in about 2 weeks, it'll be the most expensive listing in Phoenixville, coming on at $4.25 million. Oh my gosh. This is a really interesting property. It's has architectural and like art history significance. It's about 65 acres. It's incredibly scenic. The views are incredible. The family who had owned the property had also owned a lot of other parcels and had eased all these hillsides. So you have this incredible, like the most amazing view you've ever seen in your entire life from multiple portions of the property. And it's tucked at one of the higher elevations in Charlestown. So it sort of sees everything. People don't even know it exists. It's hidden behind about 80 other acres. So you don't even know it's back there.
Oh, wow.
Incredible parcel. And the architect who had designed it is also a very renowned architect for bringing European modernism over to the U.S. And he had a really good job of, especially in like the 40s
just
and 50s.
Send me the link. I want to see the photos. I can't afford that, but I'd love to see what this looks like.
It's very cool. It's a very interesting house. The architect had a really good ability to bring in the outdoors in, so it's like all glass and focuses on the view. Yeah, it's very cool. I'm excited to bring that one to market.
So let's go back to you for a second.
Yeah.
So a lot of cool stuff. No. I'm glad. This is awesome.
Completely
I'm drooling.
I know.
I want these houses. So for you personally, $4 million house. The house before that $4 million house came even in your wheelhouse. Who said to you like, oh, Alec is ready for this $4 million house? How do you get that big of a jump up to luxury?
Yeah. So that's obviously, really tough, right? So the brokerage I was with before, amazing company. They're called Engel and Volkers, and they are similar to like a Sotheby's, but they started in Europe. So they were very focused on luxury. So when I got into real estate, sort of my business plan was I'm going to own my neighborhood, right? I'm going to focus on a very small geographic area, and I'm going to, a lot of the folks that lived in that neighborhood are, moving up and buying different homes, selling their houses. So I said, I'm going to focus all of my attention here. And then I'm also going to focus my attention on trying to leverage the luxury brand and try and find clients that are familiar with this brand and, want to get in and work with us. And we had someone who actually came and they walked right into our office and they said, oh, we're familiar with the brand. Is someone interested in selling our house? We tried to sell it and it didn't go over well. We used a different agent and, we sat on the market for a year and weren't able to sell. So we're looking for something new. So we're talking to different agents. So myself and another agent in my office came and we met with them and went through everything. And it was a good partnership. We had my broker working as well. And we sort of presented them with our gambit of what we could do. And I think one of the things they really liked was when you go with one of the, handful of agents who have worked on 4 million plus properties, a lot of them have a lot of 4 million plus properties, right? Because they talk to each other. They decide, this is, there's only a handful of people who have sold properties in this sphere. And so what becomes of that is then it turns into, it becomes almost like a $4 million house is like a normal home, whereas for most agents, it's not. And so we showcased that we could really go in depth and learn every single piece of the property from the bottom up. So I spent a year over there trying to learn everything. So like I knew that house like the back of my hand, inside and out. And when we actually listed it, my buyer also bought it because we walked through and, took a look at everything. And I was able to sort of talk through every unique individual feature, every single stone in that home. And that's sort of the approach we take with every house, right? Is understand the story of it, understand the unique value proposition, because no two houses are alike, even in a townhouse community.
Yeah.
Understanding like where does the sun rise and set, how does that influence the light in the house, and then sort of just learning the story of it. And it's really helped us to break into and succeed in the luxury market.
So you're selling homes,
Homes, yeah, that's what I was just thinking. It sounds like a home.
Because you want
like
people to walk in and imagine where their frames are going to be, where their interactions are going to be, where their family's going to make their legacy start.
So you mentioned before about like some like hidden secrets about keeping real estate prices high, and how are you like what are those, and how are you getting around those, or
so really we took a look at what could we do to build a business model that was more lean and efficient and removed a lot of these unnecessary costs. So one of the first things that we saw was paid leads and referral fees. So I have had agents who have reached out to me and said, hey, I have a referral in your area, but I want 25 to 30%, and we said no, right? We just give it to somebody else. We don't want to work with it. If you want your client, if you want that person to save money, then we'll basically just pass the savings on to them. We already charge less, 2% for our listings, and it works on a luxury sliding scale. So once you hit, those $2-4 million price ranges, it goes down. But we do 2% for all of our listings and 1.5% for our buyers. So I told those agents, listen, I'm going to do it. I will happily list a house for the person that you want to refer to me, but I'm not paying you. I'm just passing the savings along to them, which
Gotcha.
The phone hung up. And after that, so that was one thing that we cut out. Another thing that we cut out, we're an independent brand, right? So a lot of people see, when you see, some of the bigger names, they're usually franchises, and there's an owner who owns and operates that individual location. And usually for the right to use that name, there's a franchise fee somewhere in the 5 to 10% range. So you're paying that franchise out of each one of these transactions, right? And when we took a look and sat down at all the things clients pay for, I said, what is a franchise? Now, franchises are great, right? Like if I'm in an airport in Singapore and I see a Chipotle, I know what I'm going to get. It's a consistent experience and a consistent product. However, due to the independent contractor nature of real estate agents, it's tough for a franchise to enforce brand standards, because then you start failing IRS taxing, and essentially you're turning them into employees. So a brokerage can't come in and say, hey, we're going to give you, key performance indicators. We're going to hold you accountable to a certain level of standard. We're going to tell you where you have to be, when you have to be there. We're going to tell you, what exact sign, all these things. They're not really allowed to tell you what to do, because then they would cross over the line from independent contractor to employee. So when I thought, well, if I explain this to a client and say, is this worth 10% to you or 8% or whatever it is, most clients would say no, because I can't go and get the same experience when I see an agent with a certain brand that's in New York and Philly and LA and Canada and down in, Cape Town, South Africa. It's going to be a different experience because it's an independent So we said no franchise fees. So that was, about 10% we shaved off there. And then the broker splits is another big one. So when you're a broker, I think I mentioned at the beginning, my business is to have agents and take a cut out of each one of their deals. Instead of doing that, because we operate together, that usual percentage is about 30%. Sometimes it goes up even more than that. We don't take that percentage out. So basically, after we got rid of all that, we said, wow, we can operate at a much leaner percentage and offer to pass on all those savings to the clients. And that will also help us to generate leads more organically. So we're never having to pay for leads or doing any of these things, because we didn't feel that those were fair costs that clients should pay. Because if we actually wrote this down and said, what of these fees do you want to pay? Do you want to pay me for helping you? And then do you want to pay A, B, C, and D for all the other places that are, no one would say, yeah, I want all that extra fee. So
it's also, I would imagine you have to find the client that suits you as well. It's a lot to do with like you need someone who understands why it is your cost, like what your worth is, and who's willing to understand, like, yes, I can do this job for you. I can sell your home. I can create like this whole atmosphere around it. But you also need to respect that I am capable of doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, personalities don't always click,
Yeah.
But that's one of the nice things about our unique structure is I tend to get along with a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's just my nature. But sometimes I have someone that clicks really well with maybe one of the like our selling specialists, and I can make sure that she's working a lot with them because maybe they had a close personal relationship before. And sometimes real estate can be. Sometimes close personal relationships can also be. A little bit of a detractor. Sometimes you don't want to deal with financial stuff when you're working with your best friend. And I think the average person in the US has between 5 to 9 different realtors that are like in their sphere, whether it's their aunt or their kid in their schools, another parent, someone that they run into at the coffee shop regularly that's like a realtor. People have a lot of different choices. So making sure that your personalities click is an important thing.
I'm just going to pivot for a second. So a guy on the street that I grew up on, his mother passed away and he was given the house and he just wanted to sell it right away. And he told me some businessman came up to him with a suitcase full of money that was over asking price and just gave it to him for the deed of the house. Obviously, this is like a company buying houses and things like that. In your world, for me, that's kind of disgusting. I hate hearing stuff like that. It's not going to go to people. It's going to be rented and things like that. I mean, I could almost probably answer this question for you with all due respect and regard. But I mean, is that a trend you're trying to compete against or combat against, or you just what are your feelings on things like that?
Yeah. So our main goal is to assist people who are probably going to be living in the home, right? We don't explicitly not work with investors, but I'll be honest with you. And this is probably at some point, maybe we'll have a division that's a little bit more tilted towards investors. But the way that we set up our business model was to assist people who are going to be living in the house. That's why our fees are lower, and all of that sort of stuff. But we really love the storytelling aspect of real estate. We really love the selling the homes. And, it's part of the market right now. If you have a house that people know will be listed, there is going to be someone, cash for homes business, someone who is, probably an investor that wants to flip it. I was in one last night that was clearly just flipped. And you see these things all the time. And obviously there is value added to that, right? Some of these homes need a professional touch to be completely gutted and remodeled, depending on the condition of it. But the clients that we focus on are usually folks that work with us because of wanting to live in the house and find their next dream home.
And on that regard, what's the future now? Here we are, you're selling these multi-million-dollar houses, and there's competition like that, and there's and the market's changing all the time. What do you foresee for the future of, not only the housing market but you yourself?
Yeah. So obviously the real estate market is incredibly hard to predict, right? I remember in 2021, 2022, every time I'd have buyers buying houses and selling houses, I'd say to myself in Phoenixville, this has to be the ceiling, right? We can't go up from here. And then we keep going up. And so there's no expert analyst, anyone who has a crystal ball in the real estate market, that would be the best thing you could potentially have, but experts are wrong all the time. So we have no idea where the market's going to go. Nationally, it's sort of trending a little bit more towards tilting to a balanced market, more towards buyers, but locally in this area, there's still a very, very low amount of inventory that people want. So we're still in a strong seller's market. One of the things that makes us unique is we're still small. Right? We are nimble and we're able to adjust quickly to changes. We built our system around this new way of doing real estate. And part of our business model was to keep it, because I don't have a bunch of independent agents out there working, because we're working together as a team, we can shift and move quickly. So if for some reason Phoenixville did start to shift more towards a buyer's market, we're ready to adapt. If for some reason, we shifted, obviously we do everything. I list townhouses, I list single family houses, I list $4 million houses. We do anything in and around this area, but we're always going to be able to be adaptable and ahead of the competition just because of our size and our unique business model.
So keeping your business small, knowing the area, you have your own website. How does the importance of knowing How do you feel that the importance of knowing your neighborhoods plays into selling your properties?
Yeah, absolutely. So my wife, as sort of a side project, has just recently purchased Phoenixville.com, which is sort of, if I were to sum it up in a sentence or two, KRG and our real estate brokerage is how we serve the community, and Phoenixville.com is how we give back to the community. Okay. So it's more of a place where we can highlight, look at how amazing this town is to live. It's a place where we can sit down with folks and learn about their business and highlight their business, highlight what they're doing in the community, talk about community events. It's stuff that we do anyways as realtors and as agents. So I already have this backlog of knowledge about the neighborhoods and what makes those places special. So I had sold a house to one of the co-owners of the website and approached him and was like, you know what? We have a real estate brokerage. Already have all this knowledge. My wife has a good writing background. We have some friends that are also going to be working on the project with us. Like I had someone yesterday who was out at, I believe that Representative Paul Friel was out at the Colonial last night. And so I have someone who's very, focused on the local government. So we're working with folks that we know and friends that we have to sort of build a official community guideline hub, lifestyle centric website to sort of provide people with the information about how amazing Phoenixville is. Because I meet people at open houses that come through and they're like, oh, I'm from Conshohocken. I have a friend who moved to Phoenixville, but I don't know too much about it. And, and then I end up talking with them for 50 minutes about how great Phoenixville is.
Yeah.
And they end up moving. So we plan on launching Phoenixville.com on June 1st. And we've been loading up a bunch of articles on the back end, doing a lot of work to put together, we've been sitting down with small business owners and interviewing them to sort of understand, their impact on the community. We have the website broken up into a few main categories. So the first is food and drink. Great spot. Everybody's going to go there, right? And Phoenixville's got some amazing, breweries, restaurants, coffee shops. There's, too many good places to name. So we have a section on that, section on the events and community, a section on business and philanthropy, and then one of our big sort of, flagship things that we'll do is our community spotlight. So we're going to sit down with small business owners or individuals or nonprofits and sort of do a full feature where we sit down with an interview, we get to know them, their business, their story, and then we share that with the community. We're super passionate about Phoenixville, and it's I've convinced many people to come move to this area, whether they're friends or clients that have looked. And it's a town that has a unique story to tell and a town that is just an incredibly unique feel. So we were just so passionate about it. It sort of made sense that if we're already doing all of this on the back end and I'm already telling everybody about it, why not get a team together that can actually tell the story and sort of give back to everybody, where it's not just me waving a flag that says Phoenixville is great. I can, actually help promote it through an official channel.
Well, thanks, Alec, for coming by and talking real estate and Phoenixville.com. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me out.
Right on. This has been The Buzz About Real Estate. Thank you very much for tuning in. Please subscribe on all platforms for future episodes. If you'd like your podcast recorded or need a space for filming, please visit 15northvideo.com for more information.